Yeah. And then you throw it to the animal.
So you call it all of it?
Yes, yes, but like this.
How is it called?
Boleadoras.
Leo Caldiario, Vicky. Leo Caldiario.
And that's because the family who lived here were the owners of all the countryside where the airport is now. That's why it's the Ezeiza airport, and this was the Ezeiza house. They lived here in the city and they have all that land. Now, during immigration times, when the wealthy people were living in these houses, and the city received so many immigrants, these people started to feel invaded. Yes, there was a big contradiction because on one hand they needed these European workers to work their lands and to become even richer, but at the same time they didn't want to share the same space in the city with them. So when the immigrants came here, they decided to move to the north. Now, there were no buyers for this type of houses. They couldn't find possible buyers because the rich people didn't want to live in the south any longer, and the poor people, the immigrants, they had no money. They could not afford it, exactly. So they just abandoned these houses. They moved to the north. They started to build their French palaces in the north. And these houses were emptied, abandoned. Of course, they were taken over by immigrants, yes. And this is the origin of a type of house that we know as conventillo. Conventillo means small convent. And we call it like that because the convents have all this organization in cells, yes? And the same happened with these houses. One immigrant family used to live in each one of the bedrooms. So this house, for example, that was for 4 people originally, now more than 80 people lived in the same house, yeah? That's a good measure of what's overpopulation in a city. So each family stayed in one room living together. And it was a complete mixture. It was like a family of Italian, a family of Spanish, a family of Russians, a family of Danish, yes? Sometimes 6, 7 people in one room. Now, the families that came in the first time, the first one who stayed here, then they started to charge a rent to the other families coming. Yeah, they said we were the first to arrive, so we have to consider ourselves the owners, and then the other people who wanted to stay, they had to pay a rent for a room. Now we will see in La Boca that we still have conventillos in La Boca. They are very different houses, because they are very, very humble and they were done in cheap materials. But we still have many, many families living together in one house, one family in each room. Not in San Telmo anymore. They've all turned into stores and shops. Yes, the remains, the last part. If you compare this to the houses you've seen yesterday, the French palaces of the wealthy, you will see that they didn't want to live in the south any longer because of the immigrants, but also they wanted to change the aesthetic style of their houses. They didn't want this style anymore. It was old-fashioned for them. They were receiving the direct influence from Europe, and they already wanted a new house, yes?
Not from Europe, from France, because this is Andalusian.
Yes, this is a mix of Italian and Andalusian houses. It's like a strange mixture, yeah? No, but the new, as you said, the new influence was mainly French,
France.
and British in a way too, and other things.
Τώρα την έβαλε, 5 και είναι
Yes. Maybe most of the people in the family, they are quite common. City of Buenos Aires, a present from the Russian Tsar, the last Tsar Nicholas, for the Russian community living in San Telmo. That was very big. The whole building was done here. Here you can see it better. But the domes were brought from Russia in ships also, and they were put together here. And this park on your right is the Lezama Park. The Lezama Park is the only big park in downtown, in the southern area, yeah? And it's where the first foundation of the city took place, 1536. The river was right there. Now there's a lot of construction in the middle and we can't see the river from here. It's that way. And it used to be very close to the park. Vamos, yo pensaba hacerlo después. That sculpture there on your right was a present received by our next door neighbor, that is Uruguay. That is like the friendship of the River Plate countries. That's the meaning. No, vamos por Iriarte, así después. Podemos ir a la estación Irigoyen. Primero a la logia, porque es la logia masónica. Vamos por Iriarte. Después doblamos por San Antonio, hacemos la logia y después la estación Irigoyen. This is already Barracas. This is like the center. Now we are going to go inside the narrow streets of Barracas. But it's a place never visited by people. If you don't live here in the south, you never come to Barracas, yes? And tourism in general doesn't come to Barracas. But it's very interesting from the historical point of view. And when you talk about all the industries, the national industries that were closed and destroyed in the 20th century in Argentina. In the 19th century, this was already countryside. Yeah? The park that we've just seen, the Lezama Park, was like the limit. And all this was a place for weekend houses and summer houses of the elite families. Then when they moved to the north, they also moved to the northern suburbs, their weekend houses. Have you been to Tigre?
No.
No. Are you going?
No.
No.
Why?
Oh.
Why?
No, because that's one of the areas where the people took their weekend houses when they abandoned the barracas in the south.
They are until now there.
Yes, not in Tigre, but in San Isidro, for example, that it's like very, very close to Tigre, you still have big weekend houses.
We have seen many presents from other countries in Buenos Aires. Is this typical of Latin American capitals? I mean, did you give to Uruguay a similar present for their city?
You mean the sculptures and
Yeah.
monuments and all
Yes.
that? Yes. Well, here it was, perhaps Eleonora told you about the celebration in 1910 of the centennial. It was the centennial of our independence. And there was a big celebration in the city, and it was the time of the big economic boom, where all the parks were designed and everything. And for that occasion, many presents were sent, like sculptures, monuments, and that's why many of the parks were opened, also to show that to the people living in Buenos Aires. But it's very typical, yes, in different anniversaries and celebrations to receive and give this type of presents. Perhaps not today, because it's much more expensive to do something like that, and our countries are quite poor. But till the 40s, for example, it was very, very common. Águila. El Águila is a very traditional chocolate factory of Buenos Aires. And you see all the building is this typical utilitarian British building. And now it's like a mall, they sell materials for constructions and for interior design and everything. They just left that front in the corner. But this area was full of factories, one next to the other. And this carway goes to the suburbs in the south of the city. In the south you have many British suburbs, because all the railways in Argentina were built by the British in the whole country, at the end of the 19th century too. And many of these people who came from Great Britain to build the railways, engineers, workers, architects, they settled in the south of Buenos Aires near the railways, and they made their British neighborhoods there, British houses and schools. And in Barracas you won't see tall buildings, it's all like houses, very flat. There are trees here in the avenue, but then when you go in, there are narrow streets with no trees, very few green. Está bien, ese orden algo, hacemos el templo masónico y la estación Irigoyen, estación Solá y Lanín. Y vamos para la boca. ¿No nos pasamos? ¿Era ideal de aquella? Este era mi temor. Creo, ¿no? Porque después hay que irse para el río, no hay ninguna que sea mano. A ver esta, Río Cuarto. Know about the murga? What is a murga? No. It's a carnival that was celebrated in the River Plate, mainly in Uruguay and Argentina. And the murga is the typical group of people from a neighborhood that they disguise with very colorful clothes, and they go along the streets singing and dancing for carnival. This was very typical in Barracas and in La Boca, never in the north of the city.
We have seen a lot of little figures, caricatures, but not painted, little statues.
Like statues.
Yes, at the flea market with these clothes and this kind of...
with masks and...
No, not masks.
And in general, these groups that are called murgas, that are neighborhood groups that dress for the carnival, they are very related to football. In each, football is like the popular sport in Argentina, and in each neighborhood there's a club, a football club, and the murga is always related. In general, it belongs to the football club. So carnival is very football-y here, you know, it's like part of the same popular ritual. Well, here we're going to go down for a minute because there's something very curious I want to show you. Vamos a bajar un toque.
Κοίτα εδώ, κάνουμε barbecue με τη μία.
Vamos acá y si quieres avanzar. Let's go down 1 minute. He's not selling, that's for them. This is very typical. Yes, workers making their barbecue in the corner. Well, I was
Hola.
This is a curiosity that we discovered once. That is a temple that belongs to masonry, masoneria. Yeah, do you know what that means?
Yes.
The secret society.
Closed windows, yes.
Well,
Typical.
the thing here was that at the beginning of the century, mainly in the 10s and in the 20s, anarchism and socialism was very popular in Buenos Aires. Mainly because of the Italian immigrants who had come, that they were anarchists, and they all stayed in the south of the city. Most of them were selling bread, and they had these bakeries. That was their profession, yes, the Italian anarchist profession. And masonry also came in that time, and it was very popular here. Already in the 19th century, most of the generals of our independence, for example, they belonged to this masonry. But this one is very curious because it's a very popular masonry that belonged to workers, yeah? Not to these generals of the independence, elite military men.
Trains.
It's called hijos del trabajo, that is sons of work, of the job, yeah? And most of them were construction workers that were here at the beginning of the century, and they built houses and things. And they had this loggia, the loggia that still works as a Mason loggia. Yeah. The house is very funny because the house is a typical Italian house. We call this houses casa chorizo. Chorizo means sausage because they are all houses that go back. Yes, it's like a narrow line with 2 bedrooms on the right. They all have the same structure, and they are very typical here for immigrants. Yes, immigrants built these houses in the beginning of the century, and they were always popular houses. And what they did is they protected the original house, and they just turned the entrance, and they painted this for the loggia, but they didn't build a special temple or something. It's a typical barracas house like any of the others, but that belongs to the loggia. Yes. And you can see all the symbols of the masonry. The eye, for example, can you see there on the second, above the second window, the eye in the middle of the triangle that is like the big brother, yes, so they called him like that. And all the different elements, like the compass and the ruler, that belong to masonry. You know that the masonry originally comes from the medieval times and has to do with construction workers.
Always.
Yeah, always. But then it turned to something more typical for the elite class and more exclusive. Absolutely. So this one recovers the original idea of masonry for construction workers. Yes? And with all, of course, with all the Egyptian symbols, the hermetic and alchemists that they cultivate. You will never find something like this in the north of the city, because the south has been has transformed into something so poor that people never come here, and these like treasures of history are never discovered.
Yes.
You can only discover them if you come and walk around and you see with a lot of attention, and sometimes you will get this type of surprises.
Yes, surprise.
But it's not known by anyone. It's not in the papers, or it's something really curious.
Yeah, curious.
And this is the type of treasures that the south of the city offers, because they talk about the turn of the century and the very beginning of the century. Yeah.
Sigue funcionando, pero está muy deteriorado. Esto se inauguró el templo en 1891.
It's the first temple, the inauguration was in 1891.
1891.
1891, the turn of the century.
Después tenemos una biblioteca, acá de ahora también está refaccionada, que está en el fondo. Ahí inclusive se le da ayuda escolar a los chicos de acá de la comunidad.
Funciona como una biblioteca así
Es una biblioteca, la biblioteca Federico Garrido. Ahora cuando en el centro, ustedes han visto muchas iglesias católicas.
Para la casa, antes de ser un templo histórico, la casa preestablecida.
Esto hicieron comprar la casa e inmediatamente en la loja había un arquitecto que la reformó y hizo el templo. Y estos son los demás, son símbolos, todos símbolos masónicos. Todo lo que están en la pared son símbolos.
They're all Mason
Symbols. Μήπως θα μας σφάξουν το βράδυ.
Αυτό μάλλον έχουν σκοπό να το κάνουν τουριστικό. Να γράφουν στον κόσμο.
Ναι.
El templo de Salomón.
Ποιο?
Ono Solomon.
Α,
Estos salieron todos, esto fue la corporación del sur.
La corporación
La última que no nos quedó ningún proyecto era la del templo.
Ellos se ocuparon de hacer la refacción.
La restauración. Vino acá el doctor Ibarra
By the sur that helped them economically to restore the building.
the building.
Les queremos hacer conocer la biblioteca del fondo.
Παλιό είναι αυτό, Τι είναι αυτό?
Αυτό είναι μάλλον. Όλος ο κόσμος.
Hola.
Πάτησα με την μπαταρία.
Άντε ρε.
Θερμού μαυρογορδάτου.
Θερμού
Ήταν και φίλοι μου μασόνοι.
μαυρογορδάτου. Εκεί δεν μπαίνεις με τίποτα όμως.
Εκεί όμως δεν μπαίνει.
Παιδιά, δεν ξέρω τι θα γίνει, να τους πούμε και τα εισιτήρια.
Και δεν έχουμε και καλά παθένα να θυσιάσουν.
Este es un capítulo, esto es único, esto prácticamente acá se ve muy poco, esto es una maravilla hecho por
He
artesanos.
says that this is very unique and it's all handmade.
Δεν λέει και.
Bueno, acá, bueno, es un lugar donde funciona esta biblioteca, ¿no? Federico Garrido está acá.
La biblioteca es una biblioteca de
Pública.
material general.
Sí, a ver, le damos ayuda escolar a más o menos son 20 chicos por día, que tenemos una docente.
He's telling me that they have a teacher here who helps primary school children of the neighborhood.
Sí.
Δεν θα μας βγείτε και παρθένες
Una
τώρα.
aporte que hacemos a la comunidad de acá del barrio.
Son pobres.
Son pobres, exactamente.
La idea ahora es que el templo esté abierto
Sí,
como general, cultural.
bueno, el templo, digamos, la casa va a estar abierta, sobre todo porque tenemos la biblioteca ya a disposición de todos los vecinos, ¿no?
Sí.
Y bueno, y en el templo se van a llevar a cabo algunos experimentos sociales.
Sí, obviamente. Sí, sí, sí.
Pero está abierta la casa de la comunidad. Inclusive a partir de esta refacción, la Corporación del Sur tiene la posibilidad de...
Πολύολεος του 19ου αιώνα
Esto no se ve.
δούλευε με υγρά αέριο.
Sí. Sí, no ocurre. Todas las prensadas de los costados.
Y
That's a very typical picture
Nice.
of the abogado Luis Iramendi.
Πού μας φέρνει ρε, πού μας φέρνει το άτομο. Θα μας φάνε λάχανο εδώ. Ωραία, δεν έπρεπε να είχαμε τη Φλωρέντσια. Εδώ, άμα δεν είχαμε.
Well, this railway station that is still working is called Irigoyen. And all the railways in the south that start in the city and they come this way and they go to the southern suburbs, they have all British constructions. As I told you today, that all the engineers who came to build the trains were British. This is the exception, because this railway station was built in the 19th century, but it doesn't have a British style. This is more like modernism. Yes, I don't know if you've been perhaps to Catalonia, Barcelona. Well, this is modernism, what we call modernism. That was then the extreme of modernism, Gaudí, yes.
Yes.
But this is very strange because it's not British. It's the only Catalan station of the whole railway of the south, yes. Now, this place, all this passage that cuts there and then goes to the left, was used for shooting many films, many tango films, yes. There's one that is very famous that is called Sur, the film, South, yes, it's a local film. With a very popular singer called Goyeneche, that he's there sitting in the middle of the street with his bandoneon and singing. Yeah, so it's a very picturesque area, and it has many of the original shops and type of stores that existed at the beginning of the century. For example, this one. That is what we in Spanish we call it almacén. Now they sell lottery. It's a typical almacén that is like a store, yes, that used to sell different food and things to eat. And that is very popular because of Borges. Borges is like the national writer of Argentina. You know Borges. And the almacén, the typical almacén, is mentioned in many of his stories and many of his things because he talks about and he writes about the Buenos Aires of the 19th century, yes? That is his scenario. So the almacén is very typical from that period. That is this type of construction, completely flat, with the door in the middle and the farolito, that is this type of lamp, yeah? That is, you will see that the south is full of this type of almacenes and full of farolitos too. Now, the railways that were built by the British, you know that the relationship between Argentina and Great Britain is very complex. It started at the beginning when we were under the Spanish power, under the Spanish crown. The British always wanted Buenos Aires. There was always like this war. Finally, it was a war between Spain and Great Britain for Buenos Aires. And they invaded Buenos Aires during the colonial period in 1806 and 1807, before our independence revolution. The British invaded Buenos Aires. That also happened in the area of San Telmo, yes, where we were today. The problem was that historians always say that they made a mistake, because instead of bombarding the city from the coast, from the ships, they went inside the very, very narrow streets of San Telmo to combat from there, and they were defeated by people in a very, in a very improvised way. People in their houses.
Coming with stones and
stones, oil,
and pans,
like that,
eggs.
with boiling oil.
Boiling oil.
Yeah. They created like fortresses inside their houses, and that's how the British were defeated.
Guerrilla
so there's
warriors.
still like a very big pride, we defeated
the British.
That's why the principal street in San Telmo that we saw today, where the bar is and the antique shops, that street is called Defensa. Defense, yes, because it's where we defeated the British. Then things changed, and at the end of the 19th century, the British came to invest. And they did all the railways, all the ports, many factories. You will see that a lot of this British utilitarian architecture, that is the brick architecture in Buenos Aires, yes. Then we have in the 20th century already the Falklands or Malvinas War.
Yes.
That was a stupid war, because it was really stupid from the military forces of Argentina to go on a war with Great Britain. We were not in the same situation that in 1806 that we could defeat the British from the houses. Yeah, it was a war in the south, in the islands, and they were of course very much powerful. But in a way, that war helped Argentina to go back to democracy, because the military forces, they thought that by going on a war with Great Britain, they would recover some of the power that were losing, the popularity, because of a patriotic sense. And the opposite thing happened. It was such a stupid war that they lost very quickly all the
support
power and the support from the people, and then democracy came back again to the country in 1983. Yes, so this is
Who initiated the war? Who started the war?
Who started the war? Great Britain.
Why?
Because they wanted the islands.
Why?
And this was very old. They've always wanted the islands.
Why?
Because they just wanted to
It is strategic.
more
It is
peace
strategic.
for the crown
It's very strategic.
colony. And because
Greece wanting the islands there.
well, but Great Britain has like a very long tradition of wanting things and getting them, yes, for the crown. And the islands are very strategical, as you said, from the geographical point of view. Yeah, because it's like the right southern end of the continent, and it opens up to the sea.
Yes.
And they wanted that part, and they got it.
Excuse, because they
No excuse.
They said that it belonged to them.
Why?
Because there had been an intent of getting these like 200 years before, and many British settled there, yes, and so the dichotomy didn't start in 1983. It was something very, very old, that they were always fighting for the islands, and they said that British conquerors had arrived there before. They had this historical support, yes, but it was their word.
Yes, they need an excuse.
They needed that excuse. But they could do what they wanted in that case.
Παΐδια, αυτό θα βρει δρόμο.
Αυτό για να είναι βρώμικο. Κάτω από τη γέφυρα. Το καυσαέριο full.
But this square here was opened in honor of a very important tango composer, that is Agustín Bardi. Yes, Agustín Bardi is the name of a composer that was from the south. He was from Barracas, and here you see a lot of people that live here. Yes, people that live in the street. Very strange to see this in the north. To have a job, and in 2001 they lost it because of the crisis. they started to do that with all the family at night, picking up the cardboard, and here they get paid when they bring the material. Here and in some other places, this type of recycling industry. So they designed these houses they opened the street in the middle and they did across, yes, 2 more streets inside for using the space in a more profitable way. And they created all this type of neighborhoods that all the houses are identical, and it was for the family of the workers. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to pay anything. The houses were provided by the British companies. And some of the workers were also British and some of the workers were locals. Mm-hmm. Some of them were Italians, different type of immigrants, yes. But they had these neighborhoods that they were very good for an immigrant who was really poor and couldn't afford a house, and the company paid a house like this for him and for his family, yes. It tells about this economic boom of the country. Mm-hmm. And now they are owned by middle class people, most of the houses. Now on the other side we will see the principal entrance of the neighborhood. It's because there used to be there a big summer house or weekend house of a wealthy family. Then they demolished them and they created a park. But the parks didn't exist before. They were, some of them, gardens of the old houses, but not urban parks. And this is a very curious neighborhood. You will see it on the left. It's also a British neighborhood built for the railway workers. This is from 1888. And it has 290 houses. Yes, it was for all the railway workers. Now they are trying to restore some parts of it because it was really falling down the last years. And these are owned today by the same original family of the railway workers. The different generations inherited the house here. And it's all in this British, typically British brick construction. Miseria, that in Brazil are called favelas.
Favelas.
This is like the local version, yes? Villa. And it's quite a sad tour, I say, because it's always like the country that was supposed to be and never really was. Yes, all the industries, all the movement, all the active industries that then were closed. Excuse me. Hola. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? Todo bárbaro. Estamos yendo para la línea. Sí, decime. Sí. Sí. Yes, it's absolutely crazy.
Beautiful.
Crazy, eh? That's beautiful.
This man was during 10 years the director of the Fine Arts School of Buenos Aires.
This is when?
This was done in the 90s.
90s, huh?
Yeah. And he was the director of the art school in that period. of the houses are, as I was telling you in the temple, the sausage house, yes? With the door and the narrow passage and the rooms on the sides. Like this one. You see, they all have these two windows and a narrow door. And the fronts are all the same size. Yes, that's
Εμείς με δω, απομείνουμε.
Δεν θα είναι κι άσχημο.
The original owner had to close because there was no more production, and they still owe the building but nothing else, and most of the machinery was sold, so they are empty. No, for the building, for a house. From the country, yes, they consider themselves from a different republic. And this, of course, has a lot to do with football. Yes, football is so popular there that the mood of the whole neighborhood moves around what happens on a Sunday during the match.
Did the Argentinians feel that they were the United States of the South America? Was that feeling?
United States, it's not someone we want to be compared with in general. Yes, it's like, no, it's not loved. United States.
I understand that you were the dominant country of the southern part of the...
In a way, yes, from the economic point of view, for many years. But that ended up in the 30s and in the 40s, and the things really changed. So now we can't pride ourselves of being the most developed country in South America at all. It's true that there's always been this
thing.
There is
a feeling you're more eclectic than your neighbors.
Yeah, because
Chile and Paraguay.
Yeah. The thing is that everything that Eleonora told you yesterday about the French influence in Argentina, Buenos Aires was decided as the South American Paris. Yes, it was built with this idea of a South American Paris. And the European influence here was much stronger than in any other countries of Latin America. And that had to do, first, that the native population here, the indigenous, was a very, very small group and not a developed culture. If you compare that to Mexico, to Peru, that they had the empires, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayas, yes. Of course, the French influence there was less stronger because there was a lot of native culture. Here we didn't have native culture. Buenos Aires was a desert of grass, there was nothing, yeah? So the European influence was what created the city. But that is Buenos Aires, that's not Argentina. Yeah? Buenos Aires is like that, we are all a mixture of different European origins with no native culture. But you in the country will find something different. If you go to the north or if you go to the south, there are stronger native cultures mixed with Europeans. You will see that people have darker skins. Yes, and if you go to the north of the country, even more. That's why Buenos Aires is so different from the rest of the country. Because there was nothing here. Buenos Aires had no native population, no mineral resources, no construction materials. It was really a desert, yeah? So it was opened by Europeans and from the very, very beginning. Well, ¿por dónde se entra, Aldo? Por Bransen, ¿no? No.
Sí, por ahí, no sé cuánto, sí. Es que es Bransen.
Well, this is already the stadium. You know that La Boca, the club that is called Boca Juniors, is one of the most popular of the city. The other one is River Plate. And they represent the south and the north of the city. Boca Juniors is the popular one and it's in the south. And River Plate is like the middle class club and it's in the north. But some people of River Plate don't want to accept this. But both clubs were born in La Boca. Because football was born here in Argentina, yes? Why? Because the British sailors, British sailors used to play football in the coast and they were seen and imitated by people of La Boca.
Quiere decir que está el tren,
Ah, mejor, ¿no? ¿Cuál es esta puerta?
A ver si dejó de pasar, no sé si pasando.
And they, see, ahí a la derecha. And they imitated these people. Most of the people living here were Italians from the Italian immigration, and they imitated the British playing this like new sport, and that's how football was born in the south, yes, of the city. And you will see that in La Boca everything is yellow and blue. You will start seeing now that those are the colors of your cup, for example, is like very much La Boca colors. The club and the neighborhood have these two colors, and it's quite funny because this was because when they opened the club, they wanted to design a flag and a badge for the football club. And they said, okay, we will pick up the colors of the first ship that arrives at the port. And a Swedish ship came by. It was a time of immigration and the port was right in front, so they were all the time ships coming and going of different origins. And they picked up the Swedish flag and they said, okay, this are going to be the colors of La Boca. Yes? And you will see that everything has like the Swedish flag and it has nothing to do with Sweden. The train is passing, so
yes,
perhaps we can go down here and walk to the door, yes? ¿Dónde nos esperas? Inside one of the conventitions. One family in each room.
Βέβαια, θα σου πάρω ένα τέτοιο, είναι πολύ ωραίο. Κοκακέρ. Έλα, δεν πειράζει, θα σου κάνει. Δεν είναι τίποτα. Κρασί, θα πάρουμε ένα.
Έλα μας τα μάτια, βάλαμε τώρα τα κρασί.
Βέβαια, κάτι παθαίνεις όταν ακούσει αποδυτήρια, υδροτσίλα, βαρβατήλα, σεξιτάρι. Ωραία, αυτό είναι ένα από τα πιο ιστορικά γήπεδα του κόσμου. Όπα.
Και αυτό θα ήταν ένα από τα πιο ιστορικά.
La Boca. Boca.
Sí,
Είδες, είναι σαν κουτί σοκολάτας.
Σε βγάλω, έλα σε βγάλω φωτογραφία.
Θα με βγάλεις στο κέντρο όμως. Βέβαια.
Αερολίνας Αρζεντίνας.
Δεν
πήγαμε με αυτούς.
Καθαρά ποδοσφαιρικό να μην το γήπεδο. Ούτε στίβος, τίποτα.
Τίποτα, μαλάκα, τίποτα. Καραϊσκάκια.
Είναι άστα.
Έλα σε βγάλω.
Ναι.
Και η κερκίδα από εκεί που σουρευέρει, ξέρεις όλο. Γιατί. Σαν να βλέπω τη Φλωρένσια κάπου εκεί πέρα.
Οπωσδήποτε.
Εκεί στις σουίτες πάνω.
Στα πριβέ.
Inherited from their grandparents or great-grandparents who built them. So they have this property, private property, that in general poor people don't have. Yeah? And if someone who lives in La Boca makes money or changes his economic status, he wouldn't move from La Boca. Sometimes they buy like a bigger house, but in general they don't want to move from the place because it's their republic, Or sometimes they buy an apartment in downtown, but they still keep their La Boca house. This is very typical with football players. That they come from La Boca, they are originally from here, from very poor families, and then they start to they became millionaire in many cases, yes, because they are sold to other European clubs. And these people in general, they never abandon, they never sell their La Boca house. And they have an apartment in Milan, another one in New York, but their La Boca house for the family is like then they start to fill it with air conditioning and with things and with home theaters, but the house remains. Yes. And this is all the original area of La Boca, not the tourist area, with all the old. The amazing thing is that these houses that are made of corrugated metal are still standing, and they are quite strong, and they are more than 100 years old, most of them.
Okay.
And the sidewalks here are even higher than in Barracas. You have in some cases these ladders that go up most of the conventillos used to have a boat inside, because if there was a flood and the man of the house had to go to work to the port, he went by boat, yeah? Like a Venice, you know, like a private Venice in La Boca. Now we're going to visit Caminito. Caminito is one street, only one street, that was opened for artists of La Boca to show and sell their work. La Boca is full of painters.
I was talking about this kind of statues. We see them everywhere.
That is typical from La Boca. This,
yes, like this.
That is from La Boca, but they were like started to be popular 10 years ago. Yes, they're like comics. And Caminito is this street here. Now we go down, and it goes only one block to that way, and it was open for the artists. And the name of the street, Caminito, that means like small path, comes from a very popular tango song that is called Caminito. Caminito que el tiempo borrado que juntos un día nos viste pasar. Well, let's go down here. ¿Qué está complicado? Es parte de la guía. Es parte. Por favor, Caminito, tengo que introducirlo con la canción. Ahora sí.
Κοίτα εδώ, κοίτα οι πουτάνες εδώ, χαμός.
You can change money, I don't know, whatever you want to do. That's African.
Έλα, βγάλε μια φωτογραφία εδώ.
Άρα, μπουφ εδώ ήθελες. Τι?
Try not to get there it is. We don't get lost.
We were dancing over there, so... Okay.
Where's the house of Carlos Gardel?
The house of Carlos Gardel is in a different neighborhood that is called Abasto, in the west area of the city. And there's a museum there, a Carlos Gardel museum.
Pasaporte, el papel de migraciones y el pasaje. Solo que hay que estar en el
Here you have all the backs of the conventillos, on the back of the house.
Για το μέρος. Όχι για την τιμή.
Σου Σε οποιοδήποτε να πας που να έχει φωτογραφικά το κάνουμε. Ναι, ναι. Να, εδώ μέσα είναι.
Pardon.
One demonstration. Perhaps Eleonora told you. Yes. Mother, so they should be.
Hey. Hey.
Till the 20s. For more than 20 years it was completely marginal. It was danced in Broga.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's
and then
becoming,
it became popular. Then I will tell you the story when we are going to leaving La Boca, because yes, it was for women, for example, it was forbidden. It was for more than 20 years. It was danced only among men. Because if you were a woman and you danced tango, you were considered a prostitute. Then in the 20s it became more popular. I will tell you the process. It's quite interesting. Let's go back. He's fine. This area of La Boca is very safe and it's always full of people, but
We can come in the evening, no problem.
but don't start walking around on your own at night, because it can get dangerous. Mainly if you're with your cameras and everything. Robbery, yes.
But here, no
If you
problem.
stay in this area, no problem. But if you start walking a little bit around, it's not safe.
Έλα, μπου. Είναι μεγάλο. Άρα τελικά είχε δίκιο η Ειρήνη.
Αλλά αύριο που θα έχουμε όλη τη μέρα ελεύθερη.
Ναι ρε μπου. Εντάξει, έτοιμοι, φύγαμε.
Είναι μικρό γιατί δεν φτάνουν τα λεφτά.
Well, this is one of the few places where you can drink mate in a public place. Do you know about mate?
Yes.
Mate is, in general, it's drunk at home, yeah, because as you share the same straw, that is in general a silver straw, you drink it with relatives or with very close friends. You will never see mate in a public place. Here, for tourism, they've opened this bar where they make people try it, yes, but in general it's something very familiar tradition.
Is it very different from mate cocido?
Yeah, no, it's similar flavor, but it's not raw. It's raw, sorry, and you just put the herbs and the hot water on top. And the traditional one, the authentic one, is drunk bitter without sugar. Then some people put sugar, and the original one is with no sugar. And there are a lot of rituals around this tradition. For example, if you serve the mate, you have to be serving the mate, and it's only one person who serves from the thermos. You can't change the thermos. You serve and you serve it clockwise.
Like
If
a
you do
ceremony.
it's a ceremony. If you do it the other way around, it's bad luck for everyone, for example. When you don't want any more, you say thank you and you won't be served anymore. So if you say thank you each time, they will stop serving you. Yeah, there are like many details. Did you say one person serves? One person serves? Yeah. And he drinks also. He's the last one. He starts. Of it, and it's very badly polluted. The government is always, each new government promises that they're going to clean it up in 10 days, in 100 days, they're making promises, and it's really very badly
100
polluted.
days, we know that, we hear that increase too.
Ah, yes. 100 days is like the measure for promises in many cases. Well, and there's a bridge that you will see now, an iron bridge, that is a transportation bridge. That now it is not working, but it used to take people. You just stood on top of it, and then you crossed to the other side. So it was like an elevator but horizontal, yeah. And when you cross to the other side, you are already in the suburbs, in what we call the Great Buenos Aires district, in the southern suburbs of the city, that are the poorest suburbs. The northern suburbs are the richest. Para aprender pasito y quiero mostrar la casa de Onassis.
De Kirchner, aguante. Kirchner.
Aguante Kirchner. Aguante is like fuerza.
Fuerza.
Strength, yes. Well, there's a house here. You will see on your left a very humble house with a balcony that says El Pescadito. Can you see it there on your left? That used to be Aristotle Onassis' house.
The Onassis house.
You know the millionaire?
Yeah.
No,
you know about him?
never heard of it.
Don't you tell me?
Never heard about him.
It was not here when they found his daughter
Yes.
killed.
No, killed no. But she lived here.
She lived there.
She lived here. Yes. Cristina
Cristina.
Onassis. Yeah. And he started his fortune here, and that was his house in the most marginal area of the city.
Yeah.
And now on your right, you will see how the small river, the arm, opens up to the big river here, and it forms a mouth, la boca. Yeah, that's why the whole area is called La Boca. It's La Boca del Riachuelo. You know, this river that is very wide, and when the Spaniards first came, and for many years they thought it was a sea, then they discovered, they called it the Sweet Sea, then they discovered it was a river. ¿Te dijeron?
Llamé a la oficina, le pregunté por el ALEP, porque yo una vez dejé, ¿viste el restaurante que está ahí frente del Sheraton?
Ajá.
Las dejé ahí a unos pasajeros y de ahí se iba caminando para el lado de Retiro, que supuestamente está en la oficina.
Sí, sí,
Ahora ya me pregunté y me dice que está en Córdoba 652.
Ah, bueno. Ahora llamo yo a Alternautas y pregunto. Well, this is a good area to talk a bit about tango and the history of tango, because tango was born in the south of the city, mainly here, in the margins of the river. You know that its origins are very closely related to immigration and to prostitution also. Prostitution was a very profitable business in Buenos Aires in the turn of the century.
Not many women.
No. Most of the immigrants had left their families behind in Europe, and they had come alone. And all these margins of the river were full of brothels, originally, one brothel next to the other. And there were two organizations, two mafia organizations. One was French and the other one was Polish, who used to bring young girls from Europe, from Eastern Europe, promising that they would marry a rich landowner of Argentina, and they made them work as prostitutes in these brothels. And tango was born as a result of the mixture of all the instruments that immigrants brought with them. They used to improvise these rough bands inside the brothels while they were waiting for a turn with the prostitutes. They have to wait in general for a long time. That's why they were with their instruments. For example, the bandoneon, that's a typical tango instrument, has its origins in the German accordion. The same happens with the guitar played in tango, that is the mandolina, it's an Italian guitar actually. So tango was born as a mixture of all these instruments, and men invented the steps inside the brothels. Yeah, so for many years it was danced only among men. This happened more or less till the 20s. It was marginal, it was danced in brothels. Oh, the only women who knew the steps were the prostitutes, yeah, but they were very few, and men were a lot, so they danced among themselves. Now, what happened in the 20s is that the wealthy families that were living already in the north, they used to send their sons to study in Europe, mainly in France. These young men, young wealthy men, also came to the brothels in the south, and they learned how to dance tango, and they took it to France. When they went to study to La Sorbonne in general, they taught tango in Paris, and it became a boom in France. So when it came back to Buenos Aires, already legitimated in France, it started only then to be accepted here by middle class and high class of Buenos Aires. That was in the 20s, but for more than 20 years it was something completely forbidden and marginal. And then it started to become the popular music of the city, and then with radio, with radiophony, tango went inside the houses, and it started to be really popular, and women started to learn the steps. Yeah, this is a picture, I think I have it. Yes. This is a picture of 1910. It's a group of workers dancing tango among themselves. You see? Pass it round. On the other side, you have a picture of the port during immigration times. Now, as you must know, tango is not the music of the country, it's the music of the city of Buenos Aires. each different province of the country, as they have a lot of native culture, they have their own folklore music. But Buenos Aires has tango, yes? It's not the music of the country, because it is related to the port and to immigration, and that was the city, not the country. The same happens with fado in Portugal. The popular music of Portugal is the Lisbon music, actually, because it's an urban music, yes, not a national folklore music. And they have many things in common, fado and tango. The lyrics, this like melancholia and saudade. Migration times, the ships like this were arriving all the time. That is a French ship, actually. No sé por dónde nos conviene salir a la costanera. Si vamos por Puerto Madero, por...
It looks French.
Yes, because she studied with Rodin in France. She was like a disciple of Rodin and of Bourdelle and of those, the French artists. And it's a fontaine, yes, it's a fountain. Have you visited the Recoleta Cemetery yesterday?
Yesterday, yes.
Well, there are many of the, 2 or 3, not many, I am exaggerating, of the mausoleums that have work by her. They have sculptures done by her, by Lola Mora. The Paz family? The mausoleums.
Of the Paz family?
The Paz family, no, that one wasn't done by her. That was done by an Italian artist. It's great, the Paz. So here you have the fountain and all the coast of the river. And behind you have the ecological reserve. But the thing with the river is that it's always decorative, because you can't swim, you can't get into the water because of the pollution. So that's really a debt for the city.
Pollution, or is it just dirt from...
No, it's mostly pollution from ships and old factories.
So if it's pollution, maybe there is a way to clean it up.
There is a way. There's never enough money to do it. That's the excuse, or what the government always says, that it's very expensive. And as years pass, it gets worse. It's not just dust. And all the trees there on your right are part of the ecological reserve.
Was it Buenos Aires? Buenos Aires? The Virgin of
The Virgin, yes. That's a sculpture that was given as a present from Italy that represents the lady of the good airs and or the good winds. You see all the small, very small trees that have been just planted, yes? The baby trees. Because this was rediscovered a few years ago. This is also done by the Corporación Sur, the corporation that has helped the temple, the Mason temple, to restore. All this area was done by the same corporation. Well, and now I will show you Puerto Madero. Puerto Madero was also an old port that was built after the immigration port. They built a port here. You will see that all the constructions are made of brick. The brick constructions are the old storage warehouses, docks of the port. It was built by British engineers and British capitals, yes, the Puerto Madero. and one local engineer that was called Madero. And this port lasted a very, very few years. You have the bridge there. This is the most modern bridge of Buenos Aires that was done by an architect, an artist called Calatrava. You know him?
You know the Olympics?
We know him very well.
Yes? I didn't know. Well, he's from
He was paid a lot of money.
There's a very similar bridge in Bilbao, actually, in the city of Bilbao. I didn't know.
There's a similar bridge in Athens.
He's doing things all over the world, but I didn't know in Greece too.
Yeah.
And on your right, the yacht club. The Calatrava bridge is great because it opens sideways, the bridge. It moves sideways like a door, yes? Well, and all this is Puerto Madero with the brick buildings. This port lasted very few years originally because it was not practical at all. The river is very, very shallow here. It was very difficult for ships to load and unload material. So they closed the port. They built another one further north. And all these storage docks were abandoned for more than 70 years. This was nothing here, just abandoned. Now they've been recycled and restored, but the structures are the original ones. Yeah? And this is all an area of fancy restaurants, very good meat, very good wine, just in case you're interested in wine and beef. Here you can have great things. And it became the most exclusive area in the city today because it is very close to the river, has a very nice view of the river, and at the same time is very close to the financial district. It's very strategic from that point of view. So all young businessmen, for example, are moving to Puerto Madero because most of the companies are building their offices here. And it's very, very new. It's like the baby neighborhood. It's 10 years old. Fortunately, the old buildings weren't destroyed because in general they are demolished. And in Buenos Aires we don't have enough laws that protect historical patrimony, so sometimes, yeah.
Everything is closed down.
I see many yachts around. I see many yachts in the port. Yes. Where are they going?
Uruguay in general. Or they go or to Tigre, that is the delta in the north of Buenos Aires, or they cross to Uruguay.
The waters are better here for swimming maybe or something like that, or they're just sailing?
No, in general they're just sailing. If they go to Uruguay now, at this time of the year, probably they just go there to the beaches also.
There are beaches.
Yes. In Uruguay the river is not so badly polluted, and you have a lot of river beaches, and then the ocean starts immediately. Here, if you want to go to the ocean, you have to drive like 4 or 5 hours to the south. But if you cross to Uruguay, you have the beach right there, and it's shorter. It's a shorter trip. You can cross in 1 hour. You take a ship.
Vabbè, gli caffè su Montevideo, penati.
No, yo no entiendo.
The river comes from the Andes mountain. The river originates.
No. The river is the Atlantic Ocean, and the river that opens from the Atlantic.
No, where it starts?
Springs.
The springs of the river. Where are they?
Ah, you mean from the other way?
The fountains.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the fountain starts in what is near Paraguay.
Yes.
I don't know if you can get look.
contra un ocaso amarillo, por quienes eran capaces de otro baile, el del cuchillo, tango de aquel Maldonado, con menos pago que barro, tango silbado al pasar, desde el pescante del carro, descontrolado y zafado, siempre miraba de frente, tango que fuiste la dicha de ser hombre y ser valiente, tango que fuiste feliz, como yo también lo he sido, según cuenta el recuerdo fue el olvido desde ese ayer. Cuántas cosas a los dos nos han pasado, las partidas y el pesar de amar y no ser amado. Yo habré muerto y seguirá orillando en nuestras vidas. Buenos Aires no te olvida, tango que fuiste y será. el manejo mental del alma, sos el más taure entre todos los taura, sos el mismo mentalco, quien te iguala por tu blanco, en la calle que quebrada del campo, en la conquista de los corazones, si se dan la ocasión. El malevaje ventarró, una voz te llaman, ventarró por tu coraje, por tus hazañas, todos viajarán a pesar de todo. Ventarró dejó Pompeya y se fue tras de la estrella que su destino les quería. Muchos años han pasado y sus guapesas y sus carretines los fue dejando por los cafetines como un castigo de Dios. Solo el triste, casi enfermo, con sus derrotas mordiendo el alma, volvió el manejo buscando su fama que otro la conquistó. Ya no sos el mismo, ventarlo